The hall was heavy with grief, a somber veil draped over the mourners as they gathered to bid farewell to Daniel, a man taken too soon. Soft music played in the background, barely audible over the muted sobs and whispers of the attendees. The coffin, intricately carved from dark oak, rested at the centre of the room, adorned with white lilies, Daniel's favourite flowers. Beside it stood a photograph of him, smiling, his eyes filled with life. Amelia Clark, his fiancée, stood at the edge of the room, her black veil obscuring her tear-streaked face. She clutched a silver locket in her trembling hands, the last gift Daniel had given her. The past week had been a nightmare. One moment they were planning their wedding, finalising the guest list and laughing about their future. The next, she was told he was gone. A car accident, they had said. A tragedy. Yet as she stood there watching the closed coffin, a gnawing unease filled her. Something felt off. It wasn't just the suddenness of his death. It was the little things, the inconsistencies in the stories, the vague details about the accident. The funeral director had insisted on keeping the coffin closed, citing the severity of Daniel's injuries. But Amelia's heart wouldn't rest. She needed to see him to say goodbye properly. As the funeral service began, the pastor's words washed over Amelia like a distant echo. She wasn't listening. Her mind was racing, her heart pounding. Finally, unable to suppress the unease any longer, she stood and addressed the funeral director. "I need the coffin to be open," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her, some filled with confusion, others with pity. Her mother, seated nearby, gasped softly and reached for her arm. "Amelia, sweetheart, you don't need to do this," her mother whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. "Remember him as he was." "I need to see him," Amelia replied firmly. "Please." The funeral director looked deeply uncomfortable. "Miss Clark, I must advise against this. The injuries—" "I don't care," she interrupted, her voice breaking. "I need to see him. I have to." The murmurs in the room grew louder, but Amelia was steadfast. After a long pause, the funeral director nodded reluctantly. Slowly, the coffin's lid was lifted. As the lid creaked open, gasps echoed through the room. Some turned away, unable to look, while others stared in stunned silence. Amelia stepped forward, her legs shaking beneath her. She clung to the edge of the coffin for support as her eyes fell on the body inside. At first glance, it was Daniel, or at least it seemed to be. The face was pale, almost waxy, as though it had been carefully reconstructed. His dark hair was styled just as he wore it in life, and he was dressed in the suit she had picked for him. But as she looked closer, her breath caught in her throat. Something was wrong. The scar on his left thumb, the one he'd gotten while assembling their bookshelf, was missing. His jawline, so familiar to her, seemed slightly off. His hands, always rough from years of working with tools, were smooth and unblemished. Her heart raced. "This isn't him," she whispered, barely audible. Her mother placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Amelia, you're grieving. It's him, darling." "No," she said louder, her voice trembling with fear and disbelief. "This isn't Daniel. This isn't him." Chaos erupted in the room. Family members and friends tried to console her, their words blurring into a cacophony of noise. The funeral director attempted to intervene, insisting that grief could play tricks on the mind. But Amelia was certain. She knew Daniel better than anyone, and the man in that coffin was not him. She left the funeral in a daze, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and dread. That night, as she lay in bed clutching the silver locket, she replayed every moment of the past week in her mind. The vague explanations about the accident, the closed coffin, the hurried arrangements, it all felt wrong. The next morning, she decided to investigate. She started by calling the hospital where Daniel's body had been taken. After hours of being transferred from one department to another, she finally spoke to Dr. Mark Harper, the coroner who had examined Daniel's body. Dr. Harper sounded hesitant on the phone. "Miss Clark, I'm deeply sorry for your loss, but I must assure you that all protocols were followed." "I need to see the records," Amelia said, her voice firm. "Something isn't right." There was a long pause. "Very well. Come to my office tomorrow." When she arrived, Dr. Harper greeted her with a somber expression. Amelia was handed a file containing the details of Daniel's autopsy. As she scanned the document, her heart sank. The dental records listed in the file didn't match Daniel's. The height and weight was slightly off. It was subtle, but unmistakable. "This can't be right," Amelia whispered, her hands trembling as she clutched the documents. "These aren't Daniel's records." Dr. Harper shifted uncomfortably, her professionalism faltering. "Miss Clark, errors like this are exceedingly rare. I'll investigate further, but—" Her voice trailed off, and Amelia caught the flicker of fear in her eyes. That evening, back in her apartment, Amelia pored over every detail she could find about Daniel's accident, her frustration mounting. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from her thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. "If you want the truth, meet me at the old bridge at midnight. Come alone." Her heart stopped. A chill ran down her spine as she stared at the message. Who could have sent it? Was it a trap? Logic told her to stay away, but the desperate need for answers drove her forward. At midnight, she found herself at the old bridge. The silence was oppressive, the darkness swallowing her whole. A figure emerged from the shadows, their face hidden beneath a hood. "You're Amelia," the figure said, their voice sharp and urgent. "I don't have much time. They're watching." "Who are you?" Amelia demanded, fear and determination colliding in her voice. "What do you know about Daniel?" The figure hesitated before answering. Daniel's death wasn't an accident. He discovered something they didn't want the world to know. Amelia's stomach churned. "Who are they?" "The people he worked for," the stranger replied. "He tried to expose them, but they silenced him. The body you buried, it wasn't Daniel. It was a decoy." Amelia's world spun. If the stranger was telling the truth, Daniel might still be alive. But why would someone go to such lengths to fake his death? Determined to uncover the truth, she threw herself into investigating Daniel's past. She contacted co-workers, friends, anyone who might know something. Most were evasive, their answers steeped in fear. But one name came up repeatedly: Mark Grayson, Daniel's former colleague. Tracking Mark down wasn't easy. When she finally confronted him, he was visibly shaken. "I can't talk about this," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "Please," Amelia pleaded, her voice breaking. "I need to know what happened to him." Mark sighed heavily, his resolve crumbling. Daniel was investigating a company called Pharmatech. They were running illegal drug trials on unsuspecting patients. He uncovered evidence, proof of their crimes, and planned to go public. That's when the threats started. The pieces began to fall into place, but as Amelia dug deeper, she realized she was being watched. Unfamiliar cars idled near her apartment, and her phone calls were interrupted by strange clicks. Her unease turned to panic when she returned home one evening to find her apartment ransacked. The documents she had collected were gone. Before she could react, a shadow moved behind her. A hand clamped over her mouth, and she was dragged into a waiting van. When the blindfold was removed, Amelia found herself in a dimly lit room. Across the table sat a man in a tailored suit, his cold gaze fixed on her. "Miss Clark," he said, his tone measured but menacing. "You've been asking the wrong questions." "Where's Daniel?" she demanded, her voice trembling with rage. The man's lips curled into a smirk. "Daniel is gone. You'd be wise to let this go." But before she could respond, the door burst open. Amelia's breath caught as Daniel stumbled into the room, alive but bruised and battered. "Amelia," he rasped, his voice raw with emotion. Tears blurred her vision as she ran to him. "I thought I lost you." Daniel pulled her close, his voice urgent. "They won't stop. We have to leave now." In the safety of a hidden location, Daniel explained everything. He had staged his death to escape Pharmatech's grasp, knowing they would stop at nothing to eliminate him. The body in the coffin was part of the plan, a desperate effort to shield Amelia while he gathered enough evidence to expose them. Together they brought Pharmatech's crimes to light, ensuring its leaders were held accountable. The road ahead was uncertain, but as Amelia and Daniel stood hand in hand, they knew they would face whatever came next, together.